Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey there.
Today we're really getting into the weeds on a market that's seen some pretty interesting movement.
That's right. We're looking at the global aqueous ammonia market.
And we're basing this on some solid data. We've got a market analysis from Cognitive Market Research.
Yeah, it gives us numbers from 2021, looks ahead to 2025, which is, right around the corner.
And forecasts all the way out to 2033. So our goal here, really, is to pull out the key trends from all these figures.
See what the story is behind the numbers, basically. What's driving this market?
Exactly. Okay, let's jump in. Let's start globally. What's the big picture?
So the global market, back in 2021, it was valued at $744.4 million, so just over $7 billion.
Okay, $7 billion in 2021. What about the near-term projection, like 2025?
It's expected to climb up to $860.7 million by then.
Right, so a decent jump already.
Yeah.
And the longer view, that 2033 forecast.
That's where you see really substantial growth. The projection is $14,499 million.
Wow, okay, so nearly $14.5 billion. That's almost double the 2021 figure.
Exactly. It points to a pretty strong underlying demand over the next decade or so.
What does that look like as an annual growth rate, a CAGR?
The report calculates the global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, at 6.2%.
6.2% globally. That's definitely a solid upward trend, no question.
For sure.
But, that global number, it often hides the details. The real interesting stuff is usually in the regions.
Absolutely. The regional picture is much more varied.
So let's break that down. Where do you want to start our regional tour?
How about North America? It's a pretty significant piece of the puzzle.
Okay, North America. What were the numbers there?
In 2021, the value was $1,366.61 million. Projected to grow to $680.13 million in 2025.
Right.
And then by 2033, the forecast is $537.32 million.
Okay, so strong growth there too. How does its growth rate, its CAGR, compare to that global 6.2%?
It's actually a bit lower. North America's regional CAGR comes in at 5.288%.
Lower than the global average.
Sure.
Interesting. And within North America, I assume the U.S. is the giant.
Yeah, no surprise there. The U.S. market was $1,150.69 million in 2021.
Okay.
And it's projected to hit $2,109.28 million by 2033. That gives it a CGR of 5.173%.
So the U.S. is the biggest chunk, but its growth rate is slightly below even the North American average.
Right. Which means other parts of the region must be growing a bit faster.
Like Canada or Mexico.
Exactly. Canada's CGR is higher at 6.091%. Its market's going from about $131 million to projected $267 million.
Okay.
And Mexico is also growing nicely, a 5.518% TGR, expected to go from around $85 million to $161 million.
So, yeah, different speeds just within North America itself. Let's hop across the pond to Europe. What are the numbers telling us there?
Europe's market was smaller than North America's in 2021, about $803 million. And it's forecast to reach $1,507.9 million by 2033.
Oh, and the growth rate for Europe?
The regional CAGR for Europe is 5.578%.
So closer to North America's rate than the global one. Do we see the same kind of country-level variation in Europe?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Maybe even more pronounced.
Really? How so?
Well, you've got the UK, for instance, projected CAGR of 5.901%. Pretty solid.
Okay.
But then look at Germany. Its CAGR is notably higher, 6.336%. That's actually quite strong, one of the faster rates we see outside Asia.
6.336% for Germany. What about, say, France or Italy?
France is projected lower, a CAGR of 4.993%. Italy's closer to the regional average, 5.178%.
And any others that stand out? Maybe lower growth?
Well, Russia is listed with a noticeably lower CAGR among the major countries shown, just 4.436%.
Right.
And the report details others, too. Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg,
Oh.
all with slightly different CAGRs, kind of reinforcing that Europe is definitely not moving at one single speed.
Seems like Germany and the UK are pulling the average up a bit then, compared to France and Russia, maybe? Okay, let's pivot. Asia-Pacific, usually a huge story in global markets.
And this is no exception. Actually, this is where it gets really interesting.
How so?
Well, first off, Asia-Pacific is by far the largest market, massively larger. In 2021, it was already $951.91 million.
Wow, okay. That's more than North America and Europe combined back then.
Pretty much. And the forecast for 2033, it's expected to reach $568.91 million.
Over $8.5 billion. Incredible. And you said it leads in growth rate, too.
Yep. Highest regional CAGR in the report, 6.693%.
Okay, so biggest and fastest growing region overall. Let's break that down. China must be enormous.
It is. China's the single largest contributor globally. It was over $1.1 billion in 2021
Right.
and projected to hit $583.53 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 6.894%. Very strong.
And Japan, also usually a big market.
Japan's significant too. About $636 million in 2021, forecast to reach over $1.2 billion by 2033. Its CAGR is 6.009%.
Oh, there are definitely other hotspots. Some are growing even faster than China or Japan on a percentage basis.
Like where?
India, for example. It shows the highest TGR listed for any country in the whole report.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
India, for example. It shows the highest TGR listed for any country in the whole report, 7.627%.
7.6%. Wow. Yeah, its market value is forecast to nearly triple, from about $500 million to over $1.2 billion.
Incredible. Any others with really high growth?
Singapore is another one. Very high CGR at 7.155%. And the collective Southeast Asia region is also strong, 7.224% CJR.
Okay.
South Korea is growing well too, 6.059%. Taiwan at 6.338%. Australia is a bit slower, 5.371%, but still solid.
It really paints a picture of Asia Pacific being dominant, not just because of China, but because of broad dynamic growth across many key economies.
Exactly right. It's both size and widespread momentum.
All right, let's head south. South America, how does it fit in? Smaller market, I assume?
Yeah, smaller compared to the big three. It was valued at $338.131 million in 2021.
Okay.
But the growth projection is quite healthy, expected to reach $728.14 million by 2033.
And the EGR. Here's something interesting. South America's regional CDR is 6.581%.
Wait, 6.58%? That's really high. That's close to Asia Pacific's rate and significantly higher than North America or Europe.
It is surprisingly high, yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like there's strong growth potential being projected there. What's driving that? Brazil's the biggest economy there, right?
Brazil's the largest market, yes. Its CAGR is strong at 6.443%. But like APAC, you see some countries growing even faster.
Such as?
Argentina stands out again. A very strong TGR listed at 7.163%, projected to more than double its market size.
Okay.
Chile also shows vigorous growth, 6.812% CAGR. Colombia and Peru are contributing too, with CAGRs over 6%.
Fascinating. So South America, while smaller overall, is really punching above its weight in terms of projected growth rate. What about the Middle East?
The Middle East market is pretty similar in size to South America, actually. $302.909 million in 2021.
Right.
Projected to reach $640.441 million by 2033.
And the growth rate, similar to South America.
Very similar. The regional CAGR for the Middle East is 6.418%, also quite healthy.
So another region growing faster than North America and Europe. Any specific countries driving that in the Middle East?
Saudi Arabia is the largest market, growing at 6.498%, right around the regional average.
Yeah.
Turkey shows slightly higher growth, 6.739% CAGR. And the UAE really stands out with a high CAGR of 7.077%.
Over 7% for the UAE. Wow.
Yeah, projected to more than double its market too, hitting over $112 million. Egypt and Qatar are also showing solid growth, over 5.9%.
So again, a pattern of specific countries showing particularly dynamic growth. Okay, last region. Africa. How does it fit into this global picture?
Africa represents the smallest market value among the regions we've discussed. It was $281.776 million in 2021.
And the projection?
Forecast to reach $516.309 million by 2033.
Okay, so growing, but maybe not as much of the others. What's the CAGR?
And that's the key point. Africa has the slowest projected regional growth rate by a noticeable margin. Its CAGR is just 4.109%.
Oh, okay. A significantly slower pace compared to, well, pretty much everywhere else. What about within Africa?
South Africa is the largest single market listed there, projected to reach almost $200 million by 2033, but its CAGR is 4.754%.
Still below 5%.
Right. Nigeria's CAGR is even lower, 4.336%. And then the rest of Africa category. That collective shows the lowest CAGR mentioned anywhere in this report, just 3.498%.
Okay. So a very different story in Africa compared to, say, Asia Pacific or even South America and the Middle East.
Definitely a much slower growth trajectory projected based on this data.
Okay, so that's our tour of the regions. Let's try to synthesize this a bit, pull it all together. What are the main takeaways when you look at all these numbers?
Well, the first big takeaway is definitely the strong overall global growth trend. The market's expected to basically double in value by 2033. That's significant.
Right, that's 6.2% global CAGR. But the second takeaway has to be the huge regional variation, right?
Absolutely. That's the critical layer. You cannot just look at the global number. The story is in the differences.
And the biggest regional story is Asia-Pacific. Dominant size, dominant growth.
No question. It's the heavyweight champion here, both because of giants like China, but also because of these incredibly fast-growing markets like India, Singapore, Southeast Asia.
But it's not just APAC showing high growth rates. We saw those pockets, like Argentina, Chile, the UAE, Turkey.
Exactly. Those stand out. They suggest, specific factors driving demand strongly in those particular areas, outpacing even some much larger economies.
And conversely, we saw slower growth in places like Russia, France, and particularly across Africa.
Right, which might point to different stages of market development or maybe different industrial focuses or other economic factors limiting growth compared to the global average.
So if you rank the regions by size in 2033, it's clearly APAC, then North America, then Europe.
Then South America and the Middle East are roughly similar in size to each other, but remember, they're growing faster than North America and Europe.
Right, that's key.
Yeah.
And finally, Africa, smallest and slowest growing.
And understanding those relative sizes and, crucially, those different growth speeds, that's really essential if you're trying to make sense of this market or operate within it, tells you where the action is now and where it's projected to heat up most.
So, pulling back to our mission for this deep dive, we've got the key insights. A global market set for major growth, led overwhelmingly by Asia-Pacific, but with really important, significant differences in speed and scale across all the other regions and countries.
Couldn't have summed it up better. And just to reiterate for everyone listening, all these specific numbers, the millions of dollars, the CGRs, they all come directly from that cognitive market research analysis we've been working from.
Yeah, solid data underpinning the conversation.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. When you consider this market is projected to reach nearly $14.5 billion globally, what underlying forces, what specific demands or applications for aqueous ammonia could be driving such huge growth, but also causing it to vary so much from one part of the world to another?
Okay, let's dive into something pretty fundamental today. The aqueous ammonia market.
Right. We've got this market analysis, and we're going to try and unpack it.
Yeah, figure out what's really pushing demand, what the roadblocks are, and, where things are generally heading for this compound.
It sounds simple, aqueous ammonia, but it's surprisingly crucial.
Exactly. You probably interact with its effects every day without even thinking about it. Things like clean water, the food on your plate.
Even the phone or computer you might be using right now.
So let's start with the drivers. According to this analysis, what's really propelling this market forward?
Well, a really big one is water. Water and wastewater treatment.
Okay. How does it fit in there?
It's essential for removing things like nitrogen and phosphorus nutrients you don't want building up, causes pollution, algal blooms, that kind of thing.
Ah, right. Nutrient removal.
Yeah, and it also helps control the pH level, making water safe, treatable, and as cities keep growing.
More wastewater needs treating. Makes sense. So more demand for aqueous ammonia.
Precisely. Clean water is just fun.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
More demand for aqueous ammonia.
Precisely. Clean water is just fundamental.
And speaking of fundamental, ammonia, nitrogen, that screams agriculture, right?
Absolutely. It's got that high nitrogen content, which makes it basically a cornerstone for fertilizer production.
And with the global population growing, food demand isn't slowing down.
Nope. So boosting agricultural productivity is key, and aqueous ammonia is a really core ingredient for that.
Okay, water, food. What else? The analysis mentioned it pops up elsewhere too.
It really does. It's used across a whole range of industries, actually. Think pulp and paper, textiles, even pharmaceuticals, chemical manufacturing.
Why so versatile?
It's a great alkaline agent.
Right.
So for lots of different chemical processes, it's just very useful.
Gotcha. Now, there was another driver mentioned that ties into bigger global trends and environment.
Yes, environmental compliance. This is a significant growth area, specifically selective catalytic reduction, SCR systems.
Ah, the emissions control tech.
Yeah,
For power plants and things.
exactly. Power plants, big industrial boilers, even some heavy-duty vehicles. You inject aqueous ammonia into the exhaust.
And it reacts with the nasty stuff.
Right. With a catalyst, it turns harmful nitrogen oxides, NOx, into just harmless nitrogen gas and water.
And with emission laws getting tougher everywhere.
The demand for SCR, and therefore aqueous ammonia, just keeps climbing.
Okay, so some really powerful drivers there, tied to essentials like water and food and global goals like clean air.
Definitely strong forces.
But it can't all be straightforward. What are the challenges? The analysis must highlight some hurdles.
Oh, absolutely. The number one issue is health and safety. No question.
Because it's dangerous stuff.
It's toxic and corrosive. You
Yeah.
really have to know what you're doing. It needs very strict safety rules, special equipment for handling, transport, storage.
Trained people, I assume?
Definitely. All of that adds layers of complexity and, importantly, cost.
Right, safety first, but cost is always a factor. You mentioned cost. Any other pressures there?
Price volatility is a big one. Making ammonia needs a lot of energy, and it heavily relies on natural gas.
And natural gas prices can swing wildly.
Exactly. So those unpredictable swings directly mess with production costs, making it hard to plan and impacting margins.
Okay, safety concerns, price swings, regulations must play a part too.
For sure. Environmental rules, occupational safety standards, they're always evolving, getting stricter.
Which means companies need to keep investing to comply.
Right. And the sources point out that this can be, well, particularly tough for smaller players in the market. Keeping up can be expensive.
Are there any specific issues, maybe regionally?
Yeah, the analysis mentions challenges in some emerging economies. Sometimes it's about maybe less awareness of the safe handling practices.
Which would naturally slow down adoption.
Right. And sometimes it's a lack of the necessary infrastructure, the industrial plants, the water treatment facilities needed to actually use it effectively on a big scale. Investment is needed there.
Okay, so we've got the drivers pushing it forward and these challenges holding it back. What about the future? What trends are shaping where aqueous ammonia is headed?
Well, one interesting trend is this push towards more eco-friendly water treatment
And ammonia fits in how?
because it's biodegradable. Compared to some other chemicals you might use, that's a plus.
Ah, that connects back nicely to the water treatment driver we talked about earlier.
It does. And also, technology isn't standing still, those SCR systems. They're getting better.
More efficient, cheaper.
Yeah, more efficient, more cost-effective, which means they're starting to be used in more places, maybe beyond just the huge power plants, into other industries or even smaller mobile sources.
Interesting. Any specific industries or regions showing big shifts?
Definitely. The semiconductor and electronics industry is highlighted, especially in East Asia. China, Japan, South Korea.
What do they use it for? Cleaning silicon wafers?
Pretty much. Extremely precise etching and cleaning processes. You need something really pure with the right alkaline properties for making those tiny components.
Wow, okay, so the electronics boom is actually driving ammonia demand.
It seems so.
Yeah.
And regionally, overall, Asia-Pacific is the dominant market.
Why there specifically?
Well, partly that huge agricultural sector needing fertilizer, but also just rapid industrialization, chemical plants, textiles, and now increasingly electronics.
Right, China, India, massive growth.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We have the drivers, the challenges, these emerging trends. What's the big picture takeaway for aqueous ammonia?
I think it really shows how this seemingly simple chemical is actually a fundamental enabler for so much of modern life.
Yeah, it's enabling cleaner water, helping feed the world, allowing industries to clean up their emissions.
And powering the advanced electronics that, run everything. It's woven deep into the global economy and into your life, probably in ways you hadn't considered.
It really is essential across so many vital growing sectors. So maybe here's something to think about. As the world demands more clean water, more food, less pollution, better electronics, all things relying on aqueous ammonia, how does the industry balance that growing demand against the really critical and often costly needs for safety and infrastructure, especially with those volatile energy prices impacting costs?
That's the key question, isn't it? It's a fundamental substance facing some complex challenges, but with a pretty vital future ahead.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.